Have you ever found yourself in such a hopeless, dangerous, or seemingly impossible situation or circumstance that you felt as if your hopes were dashed, your dreams were shattered, and all was lost? During such extreme times, when it is apparent that we do not have the strength or ability to overcome the obstacles, to free ourselves from danger, trouble, or whatever the problem may be, many of us hope, or in some cases pray, for a miracle. The stories that you are about to hear are true accounts of people from a wide variety of backgrounds who found themselves in just such extreme or impossible situations. Yet, for each one of them, the impossible became possible. These thrilling true testimonies provide ample evidence that miracles can indeed happen today for you and me.
Uh-oh. There's a suspicious-looking man waiting for me at the end of the alley. Oh, dear Lord, please protect me.
Diane, a young university student, was home for the summer. She had gone to visit friends one evening, and the time passed quickly as each shared their various experiences of the past year. She ended up staying longer than she had planned and had to walk home alone. But she wasn't afraid because it was a small town and she lived only a few blocks away. As she walked along under the oak trees, Diane asked God to keep her from harm and danger. When she reached the alley, which was a shortcut to her house, she decided to take it. However, halfway down the alley, she noticed a man standing at the end as though he were waiting for her. She became uneasy and shot up a prayer, asking for God's protection. Instantly, a comforting feeling of quietness and security surrounded her. She had the unmistakable sense that someone was walking with her. When she reached the end of the alley, she walked right past the man and arrived home safely. The following day, she read in the paper that a young girl had been assaulted in the same alley just 20 minutes after she had been there. Diane thought she could possibly recognize the man, so went down to the police station where she told her story. They asked her if she would be willing to look at a lineup to see if she could identify him. She agreed and immediately pointed out the man she had seen in the alley the night before. She asked the policeman if he would ask the man one question for her. She was curious to know why he had not attacked her. When the policeman asked him, the man answered, "Because she wasn't alone. There were 2 tall men walking with her, one on either side." Who were Diane's ghostly guardians, unseen by her but visible to the one who would have harmed her? If this were an isolated incident, we might discount this story as being a figment of the man's imagination, but stories of miraculous intervention by these mysterious beings abound.
We'll be back to get you, mister.
Hey, I'm afraid, Henry. What can we do?
There isn't much we can do, Robbie. Let's just lock up the van tight and try to get some sleep and trust God to take care of us.
In September 1971, Robbie and Henry, 2 American servicemen stationed in the Philippines, were traveling from the Naval Communications Station in San Miguel to Clark Air Force Base near Manila. It had been raining hard all day, and the trip over the mountains and through the flooded valleys was tedious. The roads were gutted with deep potholes filled with water, making driving extremely dangerous. They were both soaking wet from the many times along the way that they had to get out to push the vehicle through the mud. Everything inside the van was drenched as well. They were both totally miserable. About 9 o'clock that night, they drove into an all-night gas station, feeling it would be a fairly safe place, and asked if they could park the van there until the next morning. They were cold, hungry, and tired. Just as they were ready to lie down on the wet seats to try to get some sleep, they heard a knock. Robbie rolled down the window and asked their visitor what he wanted. He offered them young prostitutes. They politely told him that they were not interested in his offer. With his refusal, the man then offered them some drugs. When this was refused too, the man and his companion became very angry. They walked around the van, kicking at it and shouting loudly that they would be back.
We'll be back.
Robbie turned to Henry and said, "I'm afraid. What shall we do?" "There isn't much we can do," Henry replied, trying not to show his concern. "Let's just lock up the van tight and try to get some sleep and trust God to take care of us." After they had prayed together, Robbie stretched out on the back seat and Henry lay down on the front seat. Soon, they were asleep. The night passed and dawn came. The sun was shining and both of them were very hungry. Henry told Robbie he was going to find a place to eat and went to ask the station owner where they could buy some food. She replied, "You can go around the corner and buy some baked goods at my father's bakery, but that isn't necessary because I've provided some food for you." She had food cooking on the burner and a small table was set with 6 places. "Go call your friends and you can all eat here," she said. "Well, there are only 2 of us," Henry replied. "But where are the others?" she asked. "There are supposed to be 6 of you." Henry looked puzzled and said, "6? No, there's just my friend and me. I'll go call my friend." The owner told him that the workers who kept the station open all night had seen 4 men with their arms folded, sitting up in the van all night long. "They thought they were your traveling companions," she explained. She called the night workers over and they assured her this was true. Henry and Robbie were overwhelmed to realize how God had answered their prayers and sent angels to guard their van as they slept.
Have you ever seen your guardian angel, the one who watches over you, the one whose job is you? Have you ever seen your guardian angel, the one who watches over you, the one whose job is you?
Yes, these mysterious beings who possess supernatural power to intervene and protect us during time of need are angels. The Bible says, "For he shall give his angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways." You too, if you are one of God's children, are assigned an angelic bodyguard whose job is to watch over you and protect you from harm and danger. Very few people actually get to see their heavenly guardian here on earth, but some have. It was a hot, humid summer day in the American Midwest. Brian stopped by his cousin's house to go swimming. They spent the morning swimming and diving and having fun together. After lunch, Brian left reluctantly to do his summer job of mowing lawns. That night he had a date with a girl who lived in the next town. As Brian drove home at the end of the evening, he noticed that the stars and moon had disappeared, and an eerie stillness filled the air. The hot summer night seemed to have cast a spell over the entire countryside. Everything was so still and so black. Before going home, he decided to stop by his cousin's house for a quick dip in the pool. It was late when he arrived, and the house was dark. Everyone was in bed. He tiptoed quietly to the backyard. He imagined how good the cool water would feel. Brian climbed up on the diving board and stood poised, ready to dive into the pool. But as he paused and peered into the midnight blackness beneath him, he saw a very strange sight. He saw a gleaming, brilliant glow in the shape of a cross. As he looked closer, to his astonishment, he saw that the figure was actually a glimmering angel with outstretched arms in the darkness below. With eyes fastened on the silvery figure, he slowly climbed down the ladder of the diving board. He came to the edge of the pool and knelt down for a closer look. And instantly, the shining figure was gone. And Brian found himself looking into a swimming pool without a drop of water in it. The next day, he discovered that his uncle had drained the pool in order to clean it after the family had finished swimming that morning. This experience happened several years ago, and Brian is now a senior in college, but his heart is still thrilled and filled with thanks to God every time he remembers that summer night and the angel who saved his life. Listen to this thrilling, true story.
Look! Oh no! Oh no! It's a lake of burning oil, and it's coming right towards us!
We're gonna be burned alive!
Oh God, save us! Oh God, save us! Oh God, save us!
A lad who knew little or nothing about God or prayer and cared less was on a torpedoed ship during World War II. All on board threw themselves into the water to swim for their lives. 12 of the boys kept together. Suddenly, horrified, they saw a lake of burning oil raging toward them across the water. It was impossible to escape. What could they do? Just then, the only boy in the group who was accustomed to praying began to pray aloud. It was the heart cry of one in dire need to the God of mercy whom he knew.
Oh God, save us! Oh God, save us! Oh God, save us!
And with that, every one of the 11 who had never known or thought about God before followed aloud with, Immediately, the flaming oil parted, leaving a clear, wide path directly in front of them. And what do you think the God of love had placed in this path? A raft. The lad who told their story ended with,
And no one can ever persuade us boys that God does not hear prayer.
God will take care of you through every day along the way. He will take care of you. God will take care of you. God will take care of you through every day along the way. He will take care of you. God will take care of you.
Have you ever thought that that may be one good reason why God sometimes allows disasters and seemingly bad things to happen to people? So that he has a chance to show his power to save them, so they will believe on him when he miraculously intercedes and rescues them. And if you think that last story was incredible, then listen to another amazing incident that happened during World War II.
Here comes the scouting party now, Skipper.
I'm afraid we've bad news, sir.
Why? What did you find?
There's a camp of enemy soldiers just a mile or so down the beach in one direction, and another camp a couple of miles up the beach in the other direction. And we're trapped, like sitting ducks in the middle.
Captain Johnson was a chaplain in the Air Force in the Pacific area during World War II. One day, he and his crew were returning from a mission in a B-17 bomber when they ran out of gas. There was nothing they could do but try to find a place to land. The only trouble was that they were flying over the Pacific Ocean at the time. But by a miracle, they spotted a small, uncharted island on the horizon, and the skipper of the plane was able to land the huge airplane on a sandy, tropical beach. Immediately, the skipper sent out 2 scouts to explore the island. However, they soon returned with bad news. There was a camp of hundreds of enemy soldiers just a mile down the beach in one direction, and another camp just a mile in the other direction. The plane and its 10 crew members were trapped like sitting ducks in the middle. It looked like a hopeless situation, and that it would just be a matter of time before they would be caught. However, Captain Johnson tried to encourage the men. "Wasn't it a miracle that we found this island?" he reminded them. "Or wasn't it a miracle that we found a place to land? Wasn't it a miracle that we landed in broad daylight in the middle of hundreds of enemy soldiers without them spotting us? God hasn't failed us so far, so why should he fail us now?" "But, Captain," one of the men replied, "the plane won't fly without gasoline." And another of the airmen scoffed. "What is God gonna do? Drop the gasoline out of the sky?" And they all roared with laughter. However, Captain Johnson refused to be discouraged. He fell to his knees and began to fervently claim God's promises. As night fell and the crew slept under the silent stars, the lone figure continued to pray. "Jesus, you promised in your word to answer the prayers of your children. We can do the possible, but only you can do the impossible, Lord. For your word, the Bible says, with God, nothing shall be impossible. Jesus, please supply the gasoline." At last, exhausted, the captain curled up and fell asleep. But just before dawn, he was strangely awakened. Something told him that he should get up and go down and walk on the beach, so he did. And there, on the moonlit water, he saw a mysterious object bobbing on the waves. As he drew closer, he saw that it was a floating metal barge. Wading out with his flashlight to inspect its contents, he was astounded to find that the barge contained 50 drums of high-octane airplane gasoline. Rejoicing and praising the Lord, he ran back to wake up the sleeping crew. The astonished airmen stumbled down to the beach, where they stared dumbfounded at the 50 barrels of airplane gasoline now washed up and waiting for them on the shore. "Captain," the skipper said, shaking his head in amazement, "I will never again doubt that God can answer prayer. Ever. I never believed in Jesus before, but I do now," said another. "Me too." "And me," joined in the rest of the astonished airmen. Quickly, they rolled the barrels of the plane and filled the fuel tank with the precious liquid. Suddenly, the stillness of the dawn was shattered by the roar of the massive engines. Imagine the enemy's surprise when the huge airplane suddenly lifted off from within their very midst and flew off into the morning sunrise. Later, they found out how the Lord had provided the miraculous gift of gasoline. Weeks earlier, 1,000 miles away, an American tanker had gotten trapped in dangerous submarine-infested waters. Realizing the dangers of carrying so much explosive gasoline, the ship's captain ordered his men to tie the drums on metal barges and set them adrift. God then navigated one of the barges 1,000 miles through wind and sea current past 25 islands to finally wash the gasoline up at the very feet of the stranded men who desperately needed it to save their lives.
The day of miracles is not past. The day of miracles is not past.
Yes, the day of miracles is not past. God's miracle-working power is just the same today. God is still alive and well and working today just as powerfully as ever. You just have to give him a chance. There's no such thing as an impossible situation for the Lord. The Bible says, all things are possible to him that believes. In fact, it takes an impossible situation for God to do a miracle, to make the impossible become possible.